For me, just in Oklahoma in general, I've traveled a lot outside of the state, outside of the country, and there are, big differences, cultural differences, societal differences, political differences, like where I feel like comfortable. So for example, if I'm in Washington D.C., I would have no problem, holding my partner's hand, walking down the street, and even now, like I wouldn't have a problem doing that in Oklahoma. But there's still that internal piece of like, are people looking at me? Even though the voice is small now, it wasn't when I was younger. It's still, can be scary or daunting to function or exist in Oklahoma. And there have been times when things have happened, things like words or that have come up where people have used like discriminatory words. Best way to say that. And then there have been times even on campus. For example, I work out at the Sarkis Fitness Center, and because of my role at the university, my sexuality is typically associated with it. And there are times when there are some men who are very uncomfortable with me being in the locker room or showering at the same time and things like that. And a couple of those individuals will actually wait until after I leave the shower to shower themselves. So so they're like small reminders that people are not okay with that. So we the way that I like to look at it is like three different areas. So we focus on education, programming, and then also advocacy. So the education part of it would be the broad scope of it, LGBTQ ally training, and so it is touches on cultural competency, how to contemporary issues with the LGBTQ community, how it might impact or how it does impact students on our campus, to language, terminology, things like that. It's always changing and evolving. And then how to intervene when bias, is present. So that's kind of the focus of that. And we have smaller subsequent community-focused ally trainings too. So medical ally, faculty ally, K-12, resident advisors, different things like that. And then the programming piece of it, and that's where the advisory board comes in, is putting on events throughout the year that are both around visibility and awareness, but then also like social programming to find connections and meet people who are like-identified or part of a similar community. And so some of the events that we put on are, some of them much more serious. We do a candlelight vigil opening up LGBTQ History Month in October. We do LGBTQ Health Week that's coming up. What else? Kind of more serious educational focused. But then we have kind of fun programs. We do a progressive dinner at the end of the year where each course of the meal is at a different location. We have different speakers at each location as well, and talking about different things within the community. And we do an ally meet and greet at the beginning of the year, geared towards first-year students or transfer students at the university. So lots of programming, social, educational things. And then the advocacy part of it would be working with students individually or as a whole, as a macro and micro. For the macro piece of it is, are there institutional policies that we can help make more inclusive for queer students or faculty and staff? And then from the micro perspective, working with students individually. So people come from all over the world with different experiences, much more conservative areas, much more socially liberal areas. So their experience at the University of Oklahoma will be vastly different from the next person. So our focus is, for example, if a student has recently come out to their parents and they're no longer financially supported, how can we intervene and get involved to make sure that they can stay on campus, finish their education, have community, access to healthcare, things like that. So that's important for us. At it as providing information, resources of what what happens, as far as maybe it's like STDs, contraception, what it means for people, different things like that. We also don't shame. We recognize that, particularly with college students, that the percentage of someone getting an STD is very likely, and we don't shame people for having a flu or a virus similar to that. So why do we shame people for sexual health related STDs? And so, and with that in mind as well, we don't do like scare tactics. So we don't show pictures that people will like, oh, that's disgusting, or things like that. And so it really is focused on like being just educated in sexual health and sex positive. And then contraception is important too. For people to realize the different forms that are out there. What might work best for one person might not work for another person. Options, different things like that. So those are probably going to be, that's probably our biggest focus around making sure that we are providing resources and providing that education and allowing people to feel comfortable talking about it. It's a game show style sort of thing. So it's interesting when we first start, people don't want to look at us, don't want to engage, they don't want to answer questions, which I get. If in our society, if it's not talked about, there's shame involved in it. We don't want to say anatomically correct names for our body parts, things like that. So it makes people uncomfortable, but we all have them. It's part of who we are. So. You can contact me, you can come to the office. So the way that it works is that to be on the board or to be a sexpert, you apply, but the application is always available. It's not that it's only available during this time and this time. But we don't do interviews until the spring semester, towards the end of the spring semester. But the advisory board is made up of undergraduate and graduate students, and it fluctuates from year to year on how many people are on there. It's usually around 12. And so they apply, they're interviewed, and then selected. And the reason for that is, especially at this university and in this state, there are very few programs, organizations that are geared towards the queer community, and we want to make sure that the most passionate people are at the forefront to put on the programs. It's, knowledgeable. Anyone is welcome to get involved. Obviously, that would be kind of productive to get involved. With the advisory board or the events that we put on, through the advisory board or through this office. But then the other piece of it, sexperts, is kind of a similar situation that, we want to make sure that people, in some ways, have processed their own, a little bit about who they are, and are comfortable with who they are, because it would be, going back to that disservice piece of it, it would be a disservice to that individual if I said, okay, you can be on this board, but if you haven't really fully processed who you are, and there's that comfortability piece, and I know it's an ongoing thing, it's not a one-stop type thing, but then I'm about to place you on the South Oval at a table, and you're going to talk about LGBTQ events, and you have no idea, who might come up and say something, and I don't want to put someone through a traumatic experience if, they're not in a space to do that. So I'm very protective of students, and that's important to me. So yes, if someone is interested, stop by the office. Let's talk about it. If you are interested, apply. Go through the interview process. And if it doesn't work out, if you don't get it, then apply next year and get involved. Be a part of the rich culture that is on our campus, and get familiar with what we do and things like that. So. I'd say continue to question it. I think we don't question ourselves enough. I think that self-reflection piece of it. Even people who might have their identity always question it. It's a social construction, so it evolves. It's generational difference. There are cultural differences, things like that. So always question, and find resources that are going to help that questioning along or communication along. And if you don't know, then come by the office and we can talk about that. But or also think about what it is that as the individual, what is it that I need? Do I need that social connection? Do I need the educational connection? Do I need and resources like that? Because it'll be different for each person. And depending on the experience, for some people, mental health is going to be really important too. So that might be the direction that it needs to go. And it can be really overwhelming, especially when someone is questioning their sexuality. Of what do I do? I've got all of these different things. I want to. I might want to get socially connected, or I might not want to get socially connected right now. That seems really overwhelming to throw myself in a community. So I might want to educate myself, but be open to that, and be open to change, and be open to being uncomfortable in those situations, because you're evolving a lot, and it's exciting, and it will be much more exciting, down the line whenever you find that comfortability with yourself. But be okay with that uncomfortableness.